Project Hail Mary is a 2026 American sci-fi film directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, and stars Ryan Gosling, Sandra James Ortiz, and Lionel Boyce. It's based on the 2021 novel by Andy Weir, and the plot follows a brilliant but lonely middle school science teacher who has a chance to save the entire galaxy from the sun burning out. It's probably the closest thing I've seen to a traditional blockbuster in quite some time, and I guess I would consider it that. But it does make attempts to break away from the typical blockbuster mold and cliches that come with that territory. Movies like this are really not my cup of tea in almost every way, but I'm glad that I saw this. It was worth my time, and I think it's worth yours too. I went in expecting, a generic mess of cliches and explosions, and this isn't really that at all. To sum it up in a dumb way, it's kind of like a combination of Armageddon and Moon with Sam Rockwell, with maybe a little bit of like classic 80s Spielberg-esque sci-fi kind of thrown in there too. You've also got some pretty good non-linear storytelling, and some movies are just made in the editing room, and this is kind of one of those. So big thumbs up to Joel Negron here for his editing skills. Fun fact, he would be actually, I think the first editor I've actually named. So I'm sorry, editors. I think you guys are incredibly underrated. The opening scene here is where I use the moon comparison because Ryan Gosling's character, Ryland, wakes up from an induced coma out in space in a ship alone as he waits for his brain to, kind of catch up with everything that has just happened over his interstellar flight. Is it called a flight when you're in a spaceship? I don't know. I don't know if it's a different... Basically, the sun is dying, with scientists estimate it, being about 30 years until the end of humanity. And Ryland has actually had unorthodox ideas that could potentially be a solution to this, and that's where he kind of becomes an important piece of the puzzle. So between him and other scientists, they come up with a plan that involves traveling to a nearby star, but there would not be enough fuel to make it back to Earth, making it basically a suicide mission, of course, which I never saw coming. And as you would imagine, adds a seriousness that I completely did not expect. And this writing decision made for a lot of good plot twists and just some really good writing from Drew Goddard in general. So another kudos to Mr. Drew Goddard. And again, with the moon comparisons, because, this is very much a Ryan Gosling-led film, and you spend a decent amount of time with only him. Sam Rockwell had the skills to pull it off, of course, and Gosling does too, of course. I don't think anyone will be surprised by that. Because not everyone has, that ability to have, all the attention on you for long periods of time, and for it to be convincing. It's just not an easy thing to do, and I don't think a lot of actors have really pulled it off. We only really see the other characters through flashbacks, but there are a decent amount of them, and actually most of the story is told through flashbacks, kind of slowly revealing, plot points, as the film unfolds, of course. We don't get a ton of backstory with Ryland, which I guess I did kind of expect with from a 2.5-hour movie with very few characters. I'm not really complaining, though. We get enough to understand Ryland. I think that's all they really wanted us. Sometimes I have to assume that certain writing choices are intentional and not just, sloppy or not giving us what we wanted. So Ryland's a somewhat reclusive yet passionate middle school science teacher who began as a biologist that was basically ostracized from the scientific community due to his, kind of like I said earlier, his unorthodox research approach and ideas. Even his partner at one point had left him because of all this. So to me, Ryland is a fairly inspiring dude. I see him as a little bit lonely, but he also has a very wholesome view of life, and I really appreciated that. I mean, his life was nearly ruined, but he picked up the pieces and he made the most of it. The things that he has to go through and the choices he makes, really made him a more realistic and relatable character, much more than most, blockbuster type movies. In fact, I'd say that Ryland's decision-making and ultimate, selflessness are arguably just as important to the story as saving the sun itself. I know that doesn't sound, that probably doesn't sound right, but to me, that's what I got, and I really like that aspect of the story here. I mean, Ryland is not an action hero, and he's just a good guy, but also he's a regular guy, you know. And we all know that Ryan Gosling has the acting chops for a role like this. You know, he's proven himself to us time and time again at this point, and he's fucking really, really good here. Ryan Grace is the hero we need and don't deserve, and I'm not being hyperbolic at all. But there's another character here that is equally important to the story, an alien named Rocky, or at least that's what Ryland names him. He's a benevolent little rock-like creature who Ryland befriends and happens to be on the same exact mission because his own planet is also dependent on the sun. I didn't know what to think at first, but Rocky does add a classic sci-fi feel, you know, like the Spielberg era stuff. I really liked this movie, despite it not really being my thing. Even if my attention did wander a few times, it is almost 2 hours and 45 minutes. That could be my problem, not so much the movie. And I say that because it caught me off guard in at least a few ways. Like I mentioned, it avoiding blockbuster tropes, like no awful CGI. And this is a high-budget movie, don't get me wrong. A lot of money was poured into this, and that's likely why it looks so good. But it looks good, and I appreciate that because a lot of our blockbustery movies over the last couple decades have not looked all that great. Some do, some don't. The cinematography is great, and the whole movie does look great. Really, really great. Especially the way that they made the space scenes look. The colors just popping everywhere. There are parts of this movie that are just amazing to look at. Like maybe some of the best visuals, for me at least, for the last couple years. Man, even the music here is great. Like, they really did go through great efforts, again, to make this not Armageddon. Although I like Armageddon, don't get me wrong, but this ain't that, man. So I'm giving Project Hail Mary, I think I'm going to give it 3 out of 4 stars. Again, I know I said it a bunch of times, but it was just so fucking awesome to see a blockbuster that does not want to be a blockbuster. For me personally, it's not a perfect film, but it is very good. Especially considering I had no interest in seeing it initially. It is very well written and directed. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you at the multiplex. Subscribe right now, please.